So, Carla, in the past, we've had conversations and done done podcasts and other interviews about the state of New Mexico's construction industry, which you represent, and it hasn't always been a pretty picture. But I got to imagine, and I've seen data to that effect, that uh, in recent years, given the oil and gas boom, given the flow of money coming from Washington D.C., from the COVID policies and all the various Inflation Reduction Act and other legislation, that times are pretty darn good for the construction industry. What is your kind of take on the situation in construction, broadly speaking, here in New Mexico?
Well, I would agree with you. So construction really has, I think, has never been stronger. There's a lot of projects. Our contractors have very large backlogs, which is the way that they monitor, the way that we monitor how much business that they're going to have in the future. They, both private and public works. And we are seeing an influx in construction all over the state, and it's just getting, I don't want to say worse, it's just getting better with a lot of the federal dollars and private investors that are coming in now to build the wind.
Wind turbines.
Plants, yes, yeah. The wind turbines and the solar farms and the community solar. So it really is, construction is doing great right now. And I believe it's one of the things that is holding the economy up for New Mexico as well.
Now, your association, if somebody builds a factory making wind turbines, you would represent those. Do you represent the businesses that build the actual wind turbines and install the solar panels? Is that part of your group?
Not usually. Ours is doing the construction. Now, it is the one, it may not be manufacturing the solar panels. It is doing all of the installation for the solar, let's say if it's a solar farm. All of the infrastructure, the utility work, around the grading of the land and all that. And so with the wind turbine facility, it will be the actual facility.
And so those are going gangbusters right now. I mean, obviously there's mandates and regulations on them to encourage them at the state level, but there's also a slew of federal programs pushing those and incentivizing those as well, including, Joe Biden was just in town at a factory in Belen. Now, I'm assuming that's not anything you're involved with, but
there was a merit-based contractor that's going to be building the facility, though. So that's
right.
They were at the they were at the Biden event, but even though it may be union jobs that are building the wind turbines, it wasn't mandated that a union contractor build the facility, which is we're grateful for that.
Fair enough. And I guess what I'm getting to here is that I look at New Mexico's oil and gas boom, which we've been in for really the better part of a decade now, as one driving factor that has certainly brought New Mexico's construction industry into the fore, a lot of money flowing into those kinds of projects. Now we have much more in the way of one-time money also flowing in. So you've got, kind of two major spigots that haven't been there as recently as 7 or 8 years ago, that all this federal money flowing in, eventually that's going to presumably, dry up. You're not going to have Inflation Reduction Act Part 2 or some of these other policies. I mean, it's going to take some time, though.
It will take time. Like I said, the backlog will be strong for quite some time. But you're right. It's that type of money from the Fed, at least, especially from the federal government, will will dry up at some point.
So,
But for right now, I mean, we've got the Inflation Reduction Act, even for to promote the private sector, regardless of how municipalities or how the federal government spends it, the tax credits that are now going to be offered.
Right.
I mean, there's over $350 billion of tax credits available for all of this, solar, wind, electric vehicle charging stations. Now, the guidance is unclear is an understatement as far as some of the requirements for those tax credits, but it will spur the private sector to build with those
Right.
incentives.
Now, I guess my ultimate question here is, I look at the state revenue picture, while unusual, while enhanced, as somewhat organic in the sense that the state of New Mexico actually has the money. We can argue about a million different things about the management of the state, but that is real money being spent for real projects, and the state of New Mexico has those resources available. What's happening in Washington is they're printing up funny money and dropping it on the economy. So what would you broadly say is the breakdown there, as opposed to past? You've been involved in this for a while. So are we seeing this kind of as a bubble situation driven in part by the federal printing presses, or do you see this boom as being kind of a sustainable situation driven largely by the oil and gas?
As far as the state is concerned, I believe that this will be a sustainable situation, again, as long as the state has money to spend. I believe that they are, quite honestly, finally, mindfully spending money on infrastructure projects that make sense, fully funding projects that need to get done. And it remains to be seen of how long those projects will stay, because to your point, we're relying on oil and gas money for our state.
Right.
So as long as that keeps going, there will be infrastructure to be done.
Now,
the federal government is kind of gravy.
right. Yeah. Now, and that's certainly my view as well. So, are you seeing the requisite increases in state spending on construction? And by that, I mean real construction, like roads, bridges, those kinds of things that you would expect given the amount of money that's been flowing through Santa Fe? Or do you think they're skimping on the construction relative to other things?
There has been there's been projects on the books. There has been talk. Quite honestly, it's yet to be seen. They have allocated money in the last couple of years to go to projects for roads and infrastructure. But quite honestly, we really haven't seen, I mean, as far as shovels in the dirt, we have yet to see those projects come to fruition. Now, whether or not they are still in the works as far as getting, all of the funding streamlined to those projects, if they're getting quotes for them, I know that they are coming. But as far as, we still have the potential of having those projects come to fruition.
Got it. Yeah, because you drive around New Mexico, and I've been to Carlsbad recently. I've been to Farmington and points north there in Colorado, and you don't notice, like, gosh, the roads are just so great now all of a sudden.
Right.
It seems like we're not getting our money's worth. And that's kind of and this is kind of the transition we'll make here, because New Mexico has a reputation long-term of spending a lot of money on government and not getting a very good bang for our buck. Now, I'm not trying to blame you and your industry. We're going to talk about policies that the state has set up that make that happen. But should we? Do you think it's realistic for average people driving around on New Mexico roads to expect notable improvements in those roads, or is there just not enough workers available? What's the obstacle here?
Well, that's a good question. So, yes, there is a labor shortage. So I will say that there is we and that, but that is not new. We've had a labor shortage for some time. Of course, with all of the money being spent, that will only increase, and we will need more people in our industry. I believe the government is also slow to move on projects. And I'm going to take off my ABC hat and put on my Carla hat. I believe that they
Cover your logo.
yeah, right. It feels as if they have money, they have money that's going to be allocated, and it's kind of they wait. They may talk about it. They may go and get design build, and then it's like once they get at the risk of losing the money or having to revert it back, that they go and spend it. So I feel like there is a lot of delay. Government, and this is no shocker, that government works slower than the private sector. If you handed a private developer money, they would they would start spending it immediately, and it doesn't feel like the state is doing that. I don't know where the hiccup is, or I guess it would be the where the roadblock is to really start in that development. And it's very possible that it could be because they can't find. There are only so many contractors that do those that do road work. Right?
Fair enough.
Yeah. So there's many reasons.
And that kind of take full circle here. We have the Biden administration dumping all of this money on construction and trades at a time when I don't think it's unique to New Mexico. It is somewhat unique in the sense that we are undergoing this oil and gas boom, but the federal government's pumping more money into construction at a time when the industry is already, in many ways, fully saturated and doing very well. So what you're doing is driving up the cost and prioritizing federal government projects over state and local projects and that kind of thing.
Correct. That is, I mean, we have subcontractors, we have general contractors that quite honestly have to pass on the work if it needs to get done right now. Because their backlog is strong. They've got to prioritize what projects make sense, and sometimes it's not the state projects that make sense. Sometimes it's not the infrastructure. They've got other things that they could be working on, and they have to choose as a business sense. They will have to choose on what is the most important for those companies.
Fair enough. Well, I'm going to throw you a couple of questions that I hope they're not too far out of left field, but if you not sure, let me know. One is there's a bridge on I-25 that's south of Albuquerque. It's over the Rio Grande. It required $1 million in emergency repairs. It's an older bridge, and they need to replace the bridge, but they haven't yet on this interstate highway that serves 35,000 vehicles a day. The statement is it's going to cost about $80 million. Are you aware do you know about this particular bridge? Have you heard anything?
I haven't.
Okay.
I other than the fact that I have heard of the emergency repairs and where,
Okay.
but I don't know where that stands as far as the priority of getting that project, started or completed.
Yeah, I mean, if you go over the bridge and you're none the wiser, you don't read the paper or anything, it doesn't seem like there's any problem there, but it was written up and there were some very interesting photos in the paper about what they were doing before they got the $1 million to kind of temporarily repair that bridge. And it just seems like those kinds of projects should be at the top of the priority list. The other thing I wanted to ask you, and again, maybe this is out of left field, but we in Albuquerque for sure we have a conversation ongoing about a housing crisis. Now, your people are in construction. Are they in home construction, or is that a separate field of play?
So, as far as single family homes, most our contractors don't do that. We represent the commercial construction industry. Now, that being said, many of our members do multifamily projects as part because
So apartments,
it's right. So apartments,
condos.
condos, that falls under it. It's a gray area, but it does fall under commercial construction in the sense that it is more like a commercial building than it is a single family home.
So how fungible is the workforce, though? How many people go from back and forth to those different professions?
It's usually they have it's more of almost like a niche contracting. So even though it is there are general contractors that are large enough, and the subs that do both, but really usually the subcontractors and the commercial contractors they do, because it's maybe wood, not steel framing. It's kind of more of a specialty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair enough. I don't know that I'd ever broached that particular question with you. And I figured, I don't know that the local home building industry is booming in the way that the other construction trades are, but it's partially a function of limited space and real estate. There's certainly some empty spots and lots available around town. So let's talk a little bit more specifics about project labor agreements and their impact on your industry and the prices that we, the taxpayers, pay for projects. So, thankfully, so far, the state of New Mexico does not have a project labor agreement, but local governments, both Bernalillo County and City of Albuquerque, do. Can you talk, broadly speaking, about what a project labor agreement is and why they're problematic?
Yes. So a project labor agreement, and it comes in different titles. So, for instance, Bernalillo County, while still a project labor agreement, they call it a community workforce agreement. And what that really comes down to, in the most simplest general sense, is it is an agreement that a contractor must sign in order to work on that project that holds their company and their employees under union control for the lifespan of that project. So they have to, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but here in our state, every city, county, state, any municipal project falls under what's called prevailing wages. So they have to there's a set wage rate for all of those trades for all of that project. This takes a step further and actually puts them under a control of the union, of whichever labor union that is, for the lifespan of their project. So all of their benefits, all of go towards a union benefit plan.
So non-union workers can still work on these projects, but they're essentially picking up the scraps in a lot of ways from union workers, and they are working for the union, which controls the contract with the local government.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And that means, not to put too fine a point on it, but the price of those projects inevitably is going to be higher because you're paying union wages on that, regardless of whether it's union workers, union project, et cetera.
Yes, it's true, and I'll give you an example of how a project labor agreement may be able to increase the cost. For instance, so the city of Albuquerque has what they consider a negotiable project labor agreement. Now, the caveat is the project labor agreement is negotiable after the project has been bid on and after the project has been allocated to a general contractor. So if a general contractor has got their bids and then they go to negotiate the project labor agreement, and I'll give an example of their employee base, so if a subcontractor wants to use can use 5 of their own what they call core people. So they can use an electrical contractor can use 5 of their core people, their employees that they have had previously that work for them currently, before they have to use the union hall for their labor. Sometimes that number can be negotiated. Sometimes that can be 7 people, 10, 20. In a lot of cases, if a contractor is doing a smaller project, if you have 5 core employees, you can use those 5 core employees. They don't have to, they don't bring anybody from the labor hall, which means they don't have to train them in their specific safety protocols and their company. Their own company fashion. Those core employees are already used to it. They don't have any onboarding. They're ready to roll. If they have to use other people from the labor hall, it can become problematic because they don't have that same rhythm. So if a company if the contract doesn't allow for them to use more people, the subcontractor can then say, you know what, we don't agree to those terms. Then they pull their bid because they don't agree to using the project labor agreement. The general contractor is then left with utilizing the next lowest bidder, which is an increase in cost.
Right.
The conversation right now is who is going to absorb that cost, because they've already bid the project for a certain amount of money. And now automatically that increase is going to be at play because they have to use the contractor with the higher labor cost. Who is responsible for it? That the city now is claiming, well, the general contractor bid the project for that amount of money. I can see unfairly how a general contractor would say that is not our fault.
Right.
Now the cost is increased. Now we go back to the city. If it's the city's responsibility, which some would say it is, now it's the taxpayer's responsibility. So a project that has bid for a certain amount of money is now going to automatically be more because they could not come to an agreement on the project labor terms.
All right. Well, that's it always winds up being the taxpayers.
It usually always winds up being
Speaking of the taxpayers,
which is something that never comes up. We see the base project amount, and then these things can happen. And really, honestly, the taxpayer is none the wiser because that really doesn't make any headlines.
Right.
It's not a sexy topic. Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Davis-Bacon, real quickly on that. And this just happened. I just pulled this article up a day or so ago. But can you briefly talk about what Davis-Bacon is and how it affects your industry before I throw this question at you?
Sure. Davis-Bacon is a federal law back from the 1930s, where it sets a standard pay for the trades, but it is set using union collective bargaining agreements. So here in New Mexico, we have what's called the Little Davis-Bacon. So we have taken on the same form as the federal designation, and we use collective bargaining agreements, which is the agreements that unions negotiate, and all contractors, you have to use those wage sets for all public projects.
And it ultimately also drives up the costs of projects. Does it make a difference for your people being used versus unions? Is that something that's impacted, or is it?
It's not impacted in the case that it's, really everybody, those wages are determined. They're predetermined wages that everybody gets paid. So if a contractor gets a public project, they know exactly what that wage determination is. Again set by union wages. Some could say that that would be unrealistic because that's only, it's less than 8% of the construction workforce in New Mexico, but it is the way that our federal government and our state government
Got it.
has decided to play.
So, an article from Reason.com says, this is from August 11th, so a few days ago. Biden's new prevailing wage rule will cost taxpayers, benefit unions, and hike inflation. What the article talks about is that back during the Reagan administration, they repealed what's called the 30% rule. Under the 30% rule, the prevailing wage for any particular area would be based on the highest wages paid to at least 30% of the workers within the same area. I guess that was repealed under the Reagan administration. Now it's being reinstated by the Biden administration, which of course is a huge supporter of unions. So I'm just assuming that this will further increase costs on construction projects. But
It most definitely will. Our National Association has taken, they have been opposing this for quite some time. And it was, a couple of days ago when that came out, we were disappointed because it really will just, it will just increase the cost of projects. Not to mention, it also increases a lot of bureaucracy within just payroll in general.
Right.
There's a lot more regulation that a contractor now must follow in order to properly administer Davis-Bacon wages.
Very good.
So it's not just the wages themselves, it's the administration behind
right.
it.
Yeah, because that's a complicated approach to having to pay people.
It is very complicated.
So there's two major projects.
It also
here.
limits, I'm sorry to stop
That's
you.
okay.
It also limits contractors from doing that work because if they're not sophisticated enough, they don't feel comfortable branching into Davis-Bacon work, which decreases competition, which again then drives up prices.
Yeah, Bidenomics at work. So there's a couple major projects here in the city of Albuquerque that will probably, although I firmly believe they should be discussed, debated, and ultimately approved by city council. We have this bad habit in local government of allowing big game-changing public works projects to move forward without a clear path and clear evidence that these are required. I'm talking most notably ART, which was never voted on up or down by city council, but the two recent ones are the United Stadium, which was explicitly rejected by the voters for taxpayer financing. State came along with $13.5 million of capital outlay, and looks like we're talking about location, but again, cost overruns on that. So I'm going to ask you about that and this bike trail, rail trail thing that the mayor has come up with the glowing tumbleweed and the whole 9 yards. Extremely pricey project. What I understand your people get paid for working on construction projects, but what's your take on those projects?
So, and you're right, Paul. I can't argue against construction. So if they're going to build it, then, if they're going to decide to build it, then we just want to be able to bid that work and we want our contractors to be able to be, we want our local people to be able to work on those projects. That is our specific interest as far as what is being built.
But they'll be under PLAs.
They will be under PLAs right now if the ordinance is still in effect, and it is, that anything over $10 million is subject to, I say subject, is mandated to be a project labor agreement by the city. The county is a project by project basis. So Bernalillo County has a PLA, or what they call a community workforce agreement in place. And that is project by project. The City of Albuquerque is mandated, so it will automatically be one, which then again just drives up the cost, and ultimately will probably not have local people working on that project because their labor force is only you, so much before they have to bring in contractors that will navigate project labor agreements, or they will bring in union workers from out of state.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, again, our position is that city council should vet these projects for a variety of reasons, including parking at Balloon Fiesta
Sure.
Park, and also, uh, especially on the stadium, whether the team will be responsible for cost overruns or whether the city would. So that's those are a few things that need to be addressed. But in the few minutes we have left, of course, education and workforce development continues to be an issue. We seem to have had a fundamental shift in the American and New Mexico economies during COVID, where before it was, can I find a job? Now it's, can I find workers to do the job? And your organization has been involved with working on what you write as pre-apprentice programs, and the legislature had a $10 million allocation to promote them. So talk about that issue and workforce development in construction in general.
Well, we are very grateful that the state legislature has, now determined that we do need to put an emphasis in our trades, and not only our trades, but lots of different workforce development initiatives that may not require a college degree, which construction is one of them. So the state legislature did allocate $10 million last year to pre-apprenticeship or work-based learning experiences for high school students, and it was it wasn't specifically allocated for high school students, which is good because we need entry points into construction for a lot of reasons and a lot of different pathways. But we are trying to promote the construction trades early on, and as a good pathway and a good career choice for everybody. Construction can be, there are ways for everyone to succeed in construction. So they've been putting money towards that. So they're doing a Be Pro, Be Proud initiative. Now, I will say this: they're the state. Sometimes in our normal state fashion, which I'm not super happy with, but we're going to play the cards that we've been dealt. They've taken some of this money will go allocated. They are having career counselors in 15 different high schools around the state. These career counselors are specifically designated to help students get a work-based learning experience while in high school. So they'd still be receiving high school credit, but then they would be working for a local employer to get a work-based learning experience. This is not construction specific, although that would be one of the pathways that a student can choose. Again, speaking from Carla, the last thing that I really wanted to see was the state take money and then grow government by hiring state employees to sit in high schools and try and make these pathways from students to employers, local employers in the area. I understand that that's the pathway in which they've chosen to spend some of that money. We're going to hope that it's successful. So we're going to try and promote our local employers to take advantage of those career counselors.
Are young people still interested in the trades and construction? It seems like with a focus that this governor in particular has had on pouring money into college and free college, that there is a lack of interest in pushing, getting people into the trades and other jobs like that from our political leadership. I realize this is a sensitive topic for you, but I mean, is it are we seeing young people still get into this in the industry, or are they going to college and trying that out and maybe not succeeding, but just because it's free?
Yeah, you know what? Both.
Okay, fair
So
enough.
there's both. So we do see a shift in the um, trend of young people starting to move into into trades. They're understanding that they can make a good living. That is a slow process, and that is something that we all have to argue as far as the stigma of construction. But we are seeing that. What we also do see, we have a lot of people within our program that have this is either second career, or they have gone and done exactly what you have said. They did college, they did something, maybe either they left college at some point or they did something after college, and they've realized that they really did actually want to work with their hands, and now they've come, to us to learn a trade.
Great. Well, anything that we missed? Any websites or information you want people to? You want to go to the site where they can see your big trophy there for your executive award. Well, this is your chance to promote yourself.
There's no pictures on the website of the award, but for any information about apprenticeship, workforce development, they can go to it's www.abcnm.org, and that is that is the website for our organization, and they can learn really honestly everything about our organization, and including the apprenticeship program and the requirements.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, Carla, and congratulations again. All kidding and joshing aside. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.